For too long, we've been told that carbon dioxide is the enemy. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? CO2 is the lifeblood of our planet's greenery. It fuels plants, boosts crop yields, and nourishes the earth. Today we stand at a crossroads where misguided policies like net zero threaten our industries, our jobs, and our future. But there's hope. A brighter, freer future is possible if we embrace the truth and unshackle ourselves from fear. Let's look at what's been happening in Cumbria, Scunthorpe and Port Talbot in the UK to see the challenges and opportunities ahead. In Cumbria, a bold plan to open a new coal mine near Whitehaven, the first in the UK in 30 years, was quashed this week. West Cumbria Mining aimed to extract coking coal, vital for steel production, creating 500 direct jobs and thousands more in the region. The project promised to reduce reliance on imported coal, supporting British industry with a local resource. But legal challenges driven by net zero dogma led to the High Court ruling against it in 2024, citing flawed assumptions about emissions, and just days ago, on April 7th, 2025, the company withdrew its planning application, marking a devastating blow to an area desperate for economic revival. This wasn't a victory for the environment, it was a setback for workers, families, and a chance to build something sustainable on our own terms. An organisation largely responsible for the unfortunate withdrawal of the company's application to start the coal mine is a organisation called the South Lakes Action on Climate Change Towards Transition, SLACT-T, weird acronym at the end there. And on their main website, which is slacc.org.uk, you can see 6 reasons why the SLACC opposed the proposed coal mine. And it's straight up, the first reason is emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, and here it is again, folks. CO2 being weaponized to destroy our way of life. And also there's a few interesting points here about how it's saying low carbon steel somehow is the future, even though the furnaces that are, funnily enough, carbon friendly, that are approved by the government, are hopeless at making the high quality steel that's needed for so much of our critical industries, in our military, in our transport, and damn near everything. And then there's another point about the high sulfur content apparently of the coke in the Cumbria mine. However, I've also seen further developments that prove that wasn't actually the case, that the study was backed by one student who perhaps wasn't fully qualified to even be doing a study on this, especially when you look at how influential this one study has been to then be used in a court case to then provide the foundation, which definitely not the only reason but a massive reason of why this coal mine now hasn't gone ahead, and instead the UK is now just buying coal from Japan. Insane. Well, meanwhile in Scunthorpe, the steel industry faces its own crisis. British Steel, ironic in that its name is British Steel, but it's owned by China's Jingxi Group, announced plans on March 28, 2025 to consult on closing its 2 blast furnaces, putting up to 2,700 jobs at risk out of a workforce of 3,500. These furnaces, the last of their kind in the UK after Port Talbot's closure, are critical for making virgin steel from iron ore. The company cites tough market conditions, tariff and high environmental costs as reason for the potential shutdown. Jingxi rejected a $50 million government offer, seeking $1 billion to fund greener electric arc furnaces, which recycle scrap steel but can't fully replace primary steel making. If these furnaces close, the UK will become the only G7 nation unable to produce steel from scratch, threatening national security and forcing reliance on imports, often from countries with far laxer environmental standards. The story is similar in Port Talbot in Wales. On September the 30th, 2024, Tata Steel closed its final blast furnace, ending over a century of steel production and cutting nearly 3,000 jobs. It's also worth mentioning that Tata Steel is owned by India. The site, once Europe's largest steelworks, was deemed unprofitable. Thank you, net zero. With Tata citing high energy costs and net zero pressures, a £500 million government subsidy will fund a new electric arc furnace by 2027, but it will process imported steel slabs, not produce virgin steel, and leaving just 2,000 workers at the site. The closure slashed Britain's carbon emissions by 1.5%, but at what cost? And do we even need to be lowering CO2 emissions when you learn the truth about CO2? In fact, we want more CO2. So the fact that CO2 emissions were reduced is a bad thing. Thousands of livelihoods and a proud industrial heritage and our ability to build our own infrastructure, all sacrificed on the altar of net zero. Now let's just talk about CO2 briefly, the gas that we're told to fear. Plants thrive on CO2. Studies show that higher CO2 levels increase photosynthesis, leading to faster growth and bigger yields and more resilient crops. Since the Industrial Revolution, global CO2 concentrations have risen from about 280 parts per million to over 400, and the results are clear. Global crop production has soared, feeding billions. Wheat, rice and soy yields have jumped by up to 15% in higher CO2 environments, according to decades of research. Forests are expanding, and deserts are greening in places like the Sahel. This isn't a crisis, it's a boon for life on Earth. But net zero policies tell a different story. They choke our industries with regulation, drive up energy costs, and force closures like those in Cumbria, Scunthorpe and Port Talbot. The UK's industrial power prices are among the highest in the developed world, pushing jobs overseas to places where emissions are higher. This isn't progress, it's hypocrisy. None of it makes sense. By importing steel and coal, we're offshoring our emissions, not reducing them. And for what? To meet targets that ignore the reality of human need and the benefits of CO2. Imagine a different path. Picture a UK where we reject the shackles of net zero and embrace a future that balances industry, jobs and nature's abundance. We could revive Cumbria's coal mine, fueling steel production with British resources. Scunthorpe's furnaces could burn on, supported by sensible policies that prioritise workers over ideology. Port Talbot could be a hub for innovation, blending steel making with technologies that harness CO2 for growth, like greenhouse farming or algae biofuels, or maybe we just carry on with the incredibly efficient work that was already being done. We don't need to choose between prosperity and the environment. CO2 actually shows us that we can have both. The closures in Cumbria, Scunthorpe and Port Talbot are not the end, they're a wake-up call. We can rebuild, we can grow. CO2 isn't our enemy, it's a gift that feeds the world. By freeing ourselves from net zero's grip, we can unleash a future of abundance, where industries thrive, communities flourish, and our planet blooms like never before. Let's seize this moment, reject fear, and build a Britain that leads with courage and hope. And together, we will defeat the climate con.